The parable of the Lord of the Flies, or maybe what has been culturally distilled into a parable, is partly a warning about human nature. But there's a converse parable, one that comes from a true tale of survival after being stranded on a remote island. The story of the Tongan castaways. I zoom into this relatively small island on Google Earth, an act that serves as a sort of establishing shot. It gives scale to the challenge the protagonists faced, a loose collection of 6 specks on a slightly smaller speck in a vast swath of blue. But they weren't specks. They were 6 teenage boys who, in 1965, had stolen a boat, escaping their boarding school on the island of Tonga Tapu, and embarked on what must have been the adventure of a lifetime. The boat was damaged in a storm, and they drifted out to sea. A stroke of luck brought them within reach of the small island of Ata, which means reflection in Tongan. All 6 boys made it safely to the island and were faced with the boundless opportunity for reflection on an uninhabited coral island. Uninhabited up until that moment, but not always. Pottery dating back to 400 BC was found here. The history of this place runs deep. And in more recent and documented history, embedded within this particular tale of survival, is another story far darker, hearkening more to William Golding's view of humanity. A ship named the Grecian, captained by Thomas James McGrath, in 1963 tricked many of the island's 350 inhabitants with the promise of trading. When they boarded the vessel, they were locked on it. McGrath was kidnapping people to bring to the Chincha Islands of Peru to do the hard and dangerous labor of mining guano. Over the course of half a year, the enslaved people would dwindle in number due to the abysmal conditions and disease. They never made it to Peru, and those that survived were either marooned on another uninhabited island or scattered elsewhere. The 200-some inhabitants who had avoided all of this were relocated to another Tongan island, and so Ata would spend a century uninhabited until this group of boys made it to shore. And their story is one of cooperation and survival. They secured the basic necessities of food, shelter, and water. They got a fire going. And I find it somewhat poetic that they were able to locate and revive a settlement, a small village made by the very same Tongans who were stolen from this place. There, the boys ate feral chickens and collected rainwater, wrote and sang songs on a rustic guitar. They lived like this for nearly a year and a half, until an Australian lobster fisher spotted and rescued them. Enmeshed in places in history are stories like this, with themes of hope and empowerment, wrought from hardship and suffering. We cling to them because the truth of it is that they are rare and often overshadowed by the dire and dismal, the pain and injustice. Islands have a way of encapsulating these stories and making them more poignant, more graspable. The descendants of the inhabitants of the island of Ata may have contemplated returning to this place, but as of 2025, it remains uninhabited. If they ever were to resettle here, they would unearth the village of Kolomaile, maybe find taro in the ground, harvest figs from the plateau, live off seabirds and bananas.